Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing again. Some of the waste and inefficiency that the federal government is identified annually by GAO, and appreciate what you've done, Mr. Dondero, of bringing this to our attention. A couple of areas. First, some of DOD's waste. Now, you probably have one of the biggest hawks in Congress. I vote for everything. I voted for the omnibus because we cut DOD. But I sit in these hearings, and I'm the senior person now on the National Security Subcommittee in the panel. Been on it since the beginning of time. And I see more and more waste. I see another report, Mr. Dondero, that DOD, in fact, its inventory of properties and assets is almost non-existent. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been very concerned about the lack of good information with
they don't have a good inventory, even of their properties and their assets, and this report highlights it again. And that's a concern. We have billions of dollars worth of assets, both domestically and internationally, and we can't even account for it. So, again, I think this is troubling. DOD. Now, the other thing too is we work with some of the folks in the DOD committee, authorization committee. We did substantial acquisition reform, and you talk about the procurement and acquisition. That's part of the problem, isn't it, sir? Is the procedures. They're cumbersome, they're outdated, they're bureaucratic, there's red tape, and sometimes you don't get the best buy for the taxpayers, right?
Well, that's a problem, but it's also a problem, as you point out, if you don't know what you have, what condition it's in,
okay, those are on assets, but acquiring new assets, it's just as bad. And one of the things that concerns me as we pass these reforms, now I know it takes a while to implement, and I met with some of the folks. I have one of the biggest acquisition activities in this assimilation and Army down in my district. I sit with the folks. We passed this stuff last year. Well, first, there's no Secretary of Army in place, or there hasn't been. Then there's no Chief of Staff. Then there's no one over the programs. You've got these vacancies, which is part of the problem. And I ask, have you implemented the acquisition reforms? No. It's no, sort of no, I get. Or are they in place? No. Or decisions are in somewhere in the chain of command. Maybe Mr. Tillerson, you could tell us what happening there.
Certainly. So let me address kind of all three of your issues. On the inventory, I agree with Mr. Dondero. The inventory is not as it should be. It is part of the broader audit status of the department. And in fact, Mr. Dondero, I and the OMB folks are meeting this afternoon to talk about progress on audit, which will include inventory. So it's an area we are aware of.
Inventory, we really can't even audit because we don't have
Correct. It. You have to have full existence and completeness to do that. So we agree. On the issue of acquisition reform, Mr. Kendall has moved out quickly with the new guidance to put some of those new procedures in place. I would respond a little bit to Mr. Dondero's earlier remarks about strategic portfolio management. We agree. And in fact, over the last 3 years, the Deputy Secretary of Defense has led a strategic portfolio review on an annual basis. So not only are the reviews done within the military departments across their business space, but then it comes to a departmental level where the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and all the heads of the agencies do a strategic review of all the investments and investment plans so that, to your point, and to Mr. Dondero's point, we can rationalize investments going forward.
We have a bill actually that deals with some property disposal and management. How many people in the audience own property? And raise your hand. Almost everybody, right? Okay. Would you have the federal government manage that property? Hell no. You'd be nuts. And we do that. And the biggest property owner is probably the biggest one is DOD. You can't get anyone to make a decision to dispose of property. I've been trying. We have 177,000 acres at NASA sitting there, and next to it 16,000 acres with the Air Force. I'm trying to get 400 acres of surplus property to transfer to do a commercial cargo center next to our port in Canaveral, not even in my district, 5,000 jobs it would create. And I've been working on it for 4 years. And the other thing, too, you got to do is you got to get some permanency to some of these military people. I'm now on my 3rd commander. They change them every 2 years. We need to get these guys at 3 years at least, maybe 4, some stability to the process. As dealing with incompetent people in the past, then I get someone competent, I got a second competent, but they're there and gone. How can you manage anything with the turnover that we have? So just a little frustration, Mr. Chairman, but it drives me batty. Oh, just one thing for the members. Did you see what the private sector did this past week in landing that booster rocket on the barge? You got to look at that and see what the private sector can do when we unleash the private sector. God forbid we should release them. We should give them a lease on doing things with private property and moving projects ahead. Thank you. Yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman from Florida. I know that excess properties has been something that has been a priority for the gentleman from Florida for a long time.
Chairman, incidentally, the bill that we're passing, I don't know if I said it, does not apply to DOD.
Right.
The one that everyone's been working on, and that's something we need to look at. Thank you.
The chair recognizes